First off, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Rob, and all of the SMN team for hosting us both here virtually. I was gutted when I found out I wasn't going to be able to attend SMN in person, but this morning I looked at the news and realized that it's hotter here in London than it is in Athens, so I feel a little bit better about it. In a moment, I'll introduce you to Bjoern Sprotte, the CEO for ship management at V.Group. But before I do, I'd like to just tell a brief story about getting value out of data. Most TV series, when they're commissioned, they start with a single pilot episode. The episode, it's written, it's shot and edited, and then it's played to a test audience, and they gather data on their response. If the data looks good, the production company will be commissioned to create a first series. If the first series goes really well, they'll be commissioned to create a second series. Only around 30% of series that are introduced on television actually make it to the second series. So about 70% flop. This has been how TV production works since right time immemorial, right back in the beginning. But then one day in 2013, seemingly out of the blue, Netflix took the industry by surprise and commissioned 2 series of a new TV show at a reported cost of $100 million. No pilot, no test audience, just a big investment. The show was House of Cards, and the gamble paid off big time. It was such a massive hit that the costs of production were actually covered by new subscriber growth in the first 6 months after it was launched. So how were Netflix able to take such a massive risk? The short answer is that they were successful in leveraging their huge volume of subscriber data to understand what people wanted and make something just for them. So, for example, they knew from their data that shows directed by David Fincher were highly likely to be watched from start to finish. They also knew that before he was caught up in scandal, shows starring Kevin Spacey were really popular with the US audience. And they knew that the original British version of House of Cards was a hit with subscribers, even though it was more than 20 years old. The insight from that data was enough that for them to know that a show directed by David Fincher, starring Kevin Spacey, based on the British version of House of Cards, would be worth $100 million bet. It's a pattern that Netflix has used time and time again to create their own shows, like Orange is the New Black, Arrested Development, and The Crown. And it's obviously much better, we now know, than the traditional way of creating TV shows. Like I said, about only 30% of first series actually get commissioned to go on for a second series. But Netflix's data-driven technique is so effective that when they create a new series, it's renewed for a second series 93% of the time. So it's much more accurate than creating pilot episodes. So what's all that got to do with shipping? Well, I think we spend a lot of time talking about how difficult data is. We talk about cybersecurity issues. We talk about data ownership. We talk endlessly about standards. But I think now as an industry, we're just getting to the point where we're really seeing some real value come out of our efforts with data. And taking a data-driven approach to operations is genuinely enabling us to be a bit more efficient, to be more resilient, and to collaborate better. So over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll be asking Bjoern to share some of his experiences of the tangible benefits of operating a data-driven organization as he's seeing it at V.Group, and also talking about how that could be replicated in other organizations. We'd love for you to get involved, so please ask questions. If you're online in the chat, if you're not online, I believe, stick your hand up and I think Rob will come and ask you, and somehow it'll work its way back to us and we'll make sure it gets asked. Bjoern, for the one or two people in the room who don't know who you are or who V.Group is, could you perhaps give us a brief introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And first of all, welcome to everyone in the room. Unfortunately, I can't be there, so also a warm welcome to those who are at home or in their offices. And I think we all work very hybrid and in mobile these days. I think that's one of the changes that we have seen. And probably, Nick, without data, this wouldn't be possible in the end, obviously.
Very true.
A few words about myself to start with. I have been in shipping basically all my life. I have been a former seafarer. I've been on my first commercial container ship when I was at the age of 15, and then grew through the ranks, took a couple of short positions and joined V.Group in February this year, before spending 4 years in Asia, in Singapore, being based out of Singapore. And before that, working for a ship owner, but also working for 1.5 years a bit more than 1.5 years in the cruise industry, running cruise ships, fleet of cruise ships out of Hamburg. V.Group, I think V.Group and V-Ships, we are very well known to everyone in the audience here. However, we are still the biggest ship manager globally. I think we take a leading position in many of the segments. We are a very large tanker manager, run more than 300 tankers globally. And our offices are really spread around across all the continents with 60 offices across the globe, which has proven to be a large benefit during these pandemic times, especially because we can access ships really globally for the benefit of the customers.
You mentioned there 60 offices spread around the world. You're involved in the management of a large number of ships, and is it tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands of seafarers as well. When we talk about data enabling value, I think resilience is one of the sort of key areas where it's important to look. And obviously, as an industry, we've just been through and are still going through possibly the biggest test of resilience we've ever seen. Perhaps as a starting point, it would be great to learn a little bit more about how you've been able to leverage data within V.Group to deal with the effects of the pandemic and effectively keep everything moving.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. And I believe without the strong systems that we have and that we operate, I don't think we would have been able to manage it that well. The systems is one thing, but of course it's the quality of data. And as V.Group, we have invested a lot in the quality of data over the last couple of years. And that's an ongoing effort because to a large extent, data is still input by human beings. However, a lot of data also is automatically connected to other systems. One thing where I believe the biggest benefit was actually in the beginning, but still is in the terms of the crew management. Due to our good platform, ShipSure, which is our operating platform, we are able to really have absolute control of the crewing operations, and it shows also in the figures and numbers that we don't have many overdue crews. We didn't have throughout the whole crisis. There has been probably a small peak once we were 3 months into the crisis last year. However, we have significantly reduced that and have minimal overdues today, which, despite of all the ongoing restrictions that we still see, flight restrictions, berthing restrictions, etc., it changes every day. It's very dynamic. It's massive workload on the teams. However, it's our obligation and it's our duty to look well after the seafarers. And it's not just because I want to say that; it's because we live and breathe that. And there's thousands of people in our organizations who are really working on that every day, in and out. So they can only do that because we have a rock solid system to do that. And the number of crew changes that we have been doing and have been facilitating should really tell that story. And then the seafarers on board, they want to have predictability, they want to have reliability. And with the systematics, with the data that we have, we can give them at least a fairly good estimate. I'm also honest and transparent. It's not perfect in all the cases. We do have overdues. We do have people whom we disappoint. And to me, every disappointment, every single seafarer whom we disappoint is a whole family affected. And that's something we shouldn't forget. Beyond all the data, there is people that we deal with, and those people want to have a little bit of certainty in their life. I think we have all seen ourselves in this pandemic that certainty is not there at this moment. It's very unpredictable, but with the tools that we have, I believe we can mitigate that impact at least to a very good extent, in my view.
I think the fact that you and I are dialing in from different countries definitely shows the uncertainty caused by the pandemic. But you're right, also the fact that it wouldn't be possible without access to without the infrastructure that's been built up over the last sort of 20, 30 years. You mentioned there about predictability for crews and predictability of operations. I'd love to just sort of hear a little bit more in terms of what that actually looks like from an operational standpoint. If you're an operator or a fleet manager, how has it changed over the last few years with the investments you've made in the data infrastructure you've built up?
Yeah, I mean, classically in shipping, we always look at things after they have happened. So we have an incident, we have an event. We have something that happens across the fleet. If you operate a fleet of 600 ships around the globe, it is the nature of the business that certain things cannot always be predicted. This may be climate things or weather things in the end. It may be berthing restrictions. It may be other ships which are not operated exactly in the way as they should be, so that they have events. Those things, of course, are beyond our reach, but there are things within our reach, and where we hopefully will, as an industry, get better to use data in such a way that we can predict things by looking at trends and forecasting trends, rather than only looking at, oh, we have a KPI that is a lagging KPI, so always behind the actual events and then analyzing those, and then be surprised every single time. We have worked very closely with a Together in Safety initiative, and on a data platform that has been developed and aligned with HILO there, which is really a predictive risk modeling scheme, we could say, where weak signals are identified to highlight potential risks or potential major shipping incidents before they happen. I think as an industry, there has been a big impact from that Together in Safety initiative. It's absolutely critical, and I can just encourage everyone listening today to really look at that Together in Safety website and engage there. And there's a lot of tools up there which we are adopting within our company. And of course, we have built our platform and enhanced our platform, our ShipShare platform, really to utilize that and to look at trends, and so that we are on top of things before they actually happen. If we do that consistently and expand that, I believe we can have totally different conversations, not only with our clients, but in the end with our crew, from a fleet manager's perspective, from a superintendent's perspective, and say, hey, hang on, what's going on here? Why is this pointing in the wrong direction? And what are we doing against it before we see more of those events happening? I think all of us in shipping know this pyramid with the small events that leads to a big event on the top. And this is basically putting that pyramid in practice. So I can just share from my very own experience. We have a performance dashboard that we look at holistically on the whole fleet, where we can drill down through all fleets and take that view. And I'm doing that myself once a day, just to see, do we see anything that is of concern and that is of a worry here, which has not only a safety impact, but ultimately, I believe, very much also a commercial impact to the operations if we can prevent certain things. This is nowhere perfect. There's a lot of room for improvement still. But if I look at the industry as a whole, through this HILO initiative that I have seen, HILO members, which are part of that platform, have seen on the tanker side, for example, about 1/3 of reduction in explosion incidents, about 1/5 of uncontrolled loads incidents reduced, and fuel spills reduced by 10%, and similar KPIs on the tanker, on the bulk carrier side. So using data to predict things contributes. Of course, it doesn't prevent small mistakes at all times, but it helps people to see trends before they actually, of incidents and worrying trends before they actually happen. So from that perspective, speaking about resilience, it's one element of resilience, but it's also about prediction here. And I believe as an industry, we are just scratching the surface at the moment. And we are looking a lot into other industries, what we can learn from there, how data is used there, and in a small example from real day life, some bakeries, they use predictive models to see what is in demand in the morning when people would go to work. Not so much at the moment, obviously, but they use weather data for that as one of the things to predict their demand. And that is a very simple example. Sounds very futuristic, but it's applied multiple times also across the planet.
That's fascinating stuff, and so just so I've got this kind of straight in my head, with something like HILO, you're looking at data coming in that create leading indicators. For example, it might be near misses to do with oily rags in the engine room or something, and if that comes up consistently, you know that there's preventative measures that could be taken before a massive event takes place or a catastrophic event takes place. Is that right?
That's absolutely right, and it helps us to close some blind spots, I would say.
Right.
Which was usually missed. If you have an accident or an incident, everyone is focused on it. There's huge attention to it. There's a big effort on it. There's a huge crisis management on it. Everybody knows about it. But those little small events, you mentioned oily rags in the engine room, near misses, looking into those ones and making some sense of that data, the small things that are usually missed because they're not so prominently visible. The idea is to highlight that, to bring it to the surface and say there is a worrying trend on occupational health and safety, or on environmental things, or any other things. So to me, this is a real game changer, because we have been so trained in, say, there's a big event, we learn something from it, we adjust a procedure, we put a big training program in place. But here it is about connecting ship and shore, the superintendent in his supporting role from the shore side to the ships, and give a guiding hand and say, look, we see something here. Is it a perception? Is it on the data? Is there something? And usually when you have that dialogue with the people on board, they would say, oh, good point that you mentioned that.
And that is a total shift in mindset from this kind of reactive approach we've always had to safety, to being much more proactive, which I think is hugely exciting. I feel like it's the first time we're really in a position where, as an industry, we can start to get ahead of some of these issues. We've had a question come in from the audience, and I'll use this opportunity to say, go ahead and ask questions, and I'll do my best to work all of them in, and use the chat, or stick your hand up, and Rob will come over to you. We've had a question, I believe, from the floor in the live space. Bjoern, you mentioned your ShipSure system. What was the reasoning behind the decision to develop your own platform rather than buy it from a kind of specialist existing maritime software provider?
Well, okay, I have been in this industry for many years, as you know, and I've seen many systems coming and going, and I have seen many people with good systems, but I have never really seen a system, except this one, I have to say, that is so much embedded in the operations, in the daily operations. Usually you find systems, they get introduced, they get updated, somebody goes after 5 years and buys the next system because someone is not really happy. For us, it's really fully connected with our operations. It's fully connected with the customers, and it allows us to do exactly what our customers demand. So we have a speed of adaptability here as well, when it comes to reporting requirements, and we are, of course, fully in control of the data. So to us, this is a real value for us, of course, as a company, but even more so for our customers, because demands are there. We have full access, full reach into this. And you might argue on first sight, yes, it is cheaper to implement a standard platform. And there are good platforms out there. I don't disagree with that. However, for us, this is a huge benefit operating at our scale with 600 ships in full management. It's tailored to our needs, it's tailored to our customer needs, and it's fully integrated with our operations. So it is not just a system that lives on the side for sake of having a database. We are not seeing it as a database. We are seeing it as a really business support tool. You don't have, when you're a superintendent, you don't necessarily have a hammer that you can achieve a lot with. So it's really the tool that you have to work with. And in many ways, it replaces, of course, also email systems, etc. So for the communication, the work, the whole dealing with the ships, supporting with the ships happens in the system and not outside on a lot of parallel platforms. For us, this has been a great success, I would say.
And we talk a lot about supply chains in general, or customer supply chains, in conferences like this. But you sort of mentioned about how your platform integrates to every aspect of the business, and I'd love to learn a little bit more actually about how that platform has been leveraged to support your own supply chains for the vessels, because I think that's something that's often overlooked, but it's a hugely important factor in ship management.
It's a hugely important factor, Nick, and it is a factor that is growing in relevance and importance. The seafarers, as we have known them in the past, they have changed. We have changed. I mean, we are so used to ordering our stuff, especially now during the pandemic where we couldn't go out shopping. We have been so much used to proper functioning logistics systems. We have been so much used to being able to see where is the parcel delivery car. Is it around the corner? Or is it 2 hours away? And that is something that I believe is something we owe to the seafarers, that they have the same insight. And that's something where our system is making very good progress, and where we are very advanced today already. One element that I'd like to mention in that context here is actually our catering, oceanic catering, which benefits, of course, from that digital ecosystem here. suppliers and the ships are really closely connected, and where we also can include a platform that is targeted on the well-being of the people on board, on the catering procedures, and really bring all of that together so that there's an assistant on board. We call it, it's a Neris platform as the brand name for it. So it's a catering onboard assistant that we have there. And that helps to really improve the quality of life on board. So it's not having a system just for the sake of having a system, but it's having something that guides the user, guides the crew, and makes sure that the logistics in the background works as seamless as possible by tapping onto the large network, instead of having the need of very, very tedious calculations as we used to do them in the past. It includes menus, it includes well-being. It has a lot of added benefits that you would normally have across various platforms and systems. And this is something where we connect it with the supply chain. We see what is available. We see the stocks on board. We see what is needed. We see what is in demand. We also see and analyze, according to nationalities on board, what is really needed there, and how can we make it more targeted to the actual crew complement on board. And that's, I believe, a good help. It's like a virtual assistant to the people on board, and with that connected to the supply chain, hopefully with the timely supplies and everything there, that's a well-being element in my view. It's a small thing.
It's at Thetius, a lot of the work that we have done over the last couple of years has actually been focused on technology and crew welfare, and we did some research last year that looked into kind of holistic welfare issues across the industry, and what we found is, the three things that really impact someone's long-term health and well-being are sleep, food, and exercise. And generally speaking, for a seafarer on a ship, there's three things that they just have no control over. So it's really exciting to hear that you're looking at how you can use technology to help aid those things.
And we're still developing it further, Nick. I mean, there's so much that we are now doing with machine learning and AI that is coming in there to really get those predictions much better and come with even better recommendations there. But this is not overly complicated. It is just it's just some, from a philosophical point of view, you need to act and do these things when the opportunities arise.
Another question from the floor. A lot has changed over the last 18 months. The pandemic has changed a lot of things, but an anonymous questioner wants to know, what would you say has been the biggest shift in the maritime technology space in the last year, 18 months?
The biggest shift in the maritime technology space, that's a very good one. I think that the shift is that we suddenly had no choice but to use the digital tools. Before, there was a lot of people who said, oh, this is optional and we can pick and choose how much we want to have. If you marry that then with environmental trends, so sustainability trends, etc., I don't think it's really a choice. We have been talking about this for the last 10 years. I've been saying this for years. But now that we were all suddenly working at home, this was really what kept things alive. We couldn't travel, so we needed to use what we had. We needed to use the data that we had. If you don't have good data in such a situation, very challenging. If you are relying on paper files, very challenging situation. Are we fully at the paperless office as everyone wants it to be? Probably not, but it's getting less, and you still see some papers here in my own background here. So I'm not fully paperless too, but I'm trying on my side, obviously, as we try as a company. I think that's a fundamental shift, so that we have access to whatever we need at any point in time. And that's part of our philosophy also, to make it available to our owners with the app that we have on the ShipShare platform, where they can have the vessel information on their fingertips. Same as the crew has a similar app where we push out podcasts to them on safety matters and other stuff, so that we just want to make it a bit easier for the customers, for the crew, and for ourselves to access information on demand. And there is, we are used to Google and search and all of that. And then when you look how complicated it still is in some professional systems and companies to find a certain piece of data, I think that's something where a good system distinguishes from a poor system. And If I may say, and I really don't want to make this a marketing speech here, but if I look at my comparison versus ShipShow versus some of the other platforms that I have seen over my life, it's really fast. It's light speed fast, and it works fast on board the ships, and that's important for user acceptance. That is one thing that is causing a lot of frustration if it doesn't function, but no one mentions it if it functions.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think it's interesting. You sort of end up with so many kind of marginal changes and improvements to how you work, but when you multiply that out over a fleet of ships or across an organization, across offices, the sum effect of it is just absolutely enormous. One more question. Again, I think this one comes from the floor itself as well. It sounds like you needed to build or customize for integrations with your specific operations. This is with reference to the ShipShaw platform. If data sources were more standardized, would that still be necessary?
Well, you still need something to analyze data and to process data in a proper way. Are data standardized across shipping? Probably it takes a long time. We haven't even managed to have properly standardized communication phrases in shipping. I think there has been an IMO facilitation convention in 1960 something, where we wanted to do standardized forms, where we wanted to do standardized vocabulary. We haven't managed to do that in those years. So probably development cycles in IMO are a little bit faster today. I do recognize that. However, for us, it's important to be fast and flexible and adaptable to the customer's needs. So do we have everything in the same formats today? No. Will we have it with EEXI and all of those things coming up? We are getting more into standardization, but someone has to feed this, someone has to vet the data, someone has to control the data, of the quality of all of this. So I believe to do it without a proper functioning system will be very, very challenging. But things may standardize more in the future, and ultimately probably less platforms might survive. You have seen similar things if you go to large company ERP systems. There's a few systems that are on the market. Unfortunately, none of those systems was geared up for shipping. I've tried it in the past to use one of those really large systems because I thought it was a good system. But it got incredibly expensive and very, very slow to adapt to shipping. Not because the team didn't want to do it, simply because it was not built for that purpose and it was not built for the particularities of our business.
So I'm gonna give a short summary of that answer. I would say yes. It sounds like it would still be necessary to build your own customized platform, even if standards, if they were universally adopted, might make that easier or sort of make those integrations easier. I think a lot of the software that exists outside of the maritime industry just doesn't necessarily understand the complexities and nuance that come with operating ships, which leads me on to my final question that's come in. What would you say to companies like Home Depot, who've recently announced their own purchase of a vessel, who think they can do this on their own? This sounds quite irreverent, this question. What do you think their biggest challenges are going to be when they get going?
Well, I think one of the things that we are exposed to in shipping is something that some people call fragmentation, or you can say there's many stakeholders in our industry. And that is back to what I wanted to just add to the systems. I mean, you have so many people that need to be connected in the end. And the ship has been for some time. This has become much better over the last couple of years, obviously. But I remember the times when I was a young sailor. There was a black hole. You couldn't really understand where the ship was unless the captain had sent a SATCOM-C telex report with a position, and even then you could write whatever you wanted. So the tracking came, and we all know the history after that. But still, there are things that are not fully connected, and still the information that you get from the ships can be connected better. Container industry has done great, and other industries have followed, and there's various levels there. However, if you enter this market fresh, you might want to look at an analogy about airlines. Amazon operates their own aircraft, and I believe they have entered into a very standardized, well, not very, but much more standardized than shipping, I would say, if I look at it in comparison, industry, where processes are much more aligned, where standards have been defined earlier. aviation has, of course, is also a complex business, and it should not be underestimated. And some people take a very simplistic view, but it does have a higher degree of standardization from, at least, well, from the research that I did on that. So if you enter that market and you go into a not so standardized area like shipping, where you have so many players and in each port a totally different process, you might face problems. But I would not rule out that a company can be successful. And I believe it is advisable as a shipping industry for all of us, for owners, managers, and whomsoever is in the industry, we should be on our toes and we should watch them very, very carefully, because there is a potential to disrupt. People come with fresh eyes into the industry. They may try new things that we have been resisting over the years, which we have now just during the pandemic tried in different ways. So I don't think there is room for any complacency. I don't think we need to be scared. We have a good and a resilient industry. We have fantastic people in the industry. We have very, very competent people in the industry. And many of them, many sharp brains of this, certainly in this conference today. But absolutely, we need to be on our toes. We need to watch what the rest of the world is doing around us and learn from it and engage with people like that.